So, apologies about speaking in English. I know that it was on the website for a long, long while that I'd be speaking in German. But hopefully the rest of the presentation is good enough. Now, I know that for the next 2 days, a lot of you are going to have a lot of people talking at you about automation, about efficiency, and about what you need in the departments that you're in. And what I plan to do over the next 20 minutes is try set the scene and set some themes for you to keep in mind as you go from booth to booth and collect some free goodies. So, 5 a.m, I thought, how could I make this make sense for most of the people here? So I'm going to start off with a question. How many of you have children? If you could just raise your hands. Whew, thank goodness. I didn't want it to be too young a crowd without a lot of people having kids. Well, for those of you who don't know, today's my son's first day at school, but I'm missing it to be here with you. Not for you to feel guilty, but I thought that when talking about digitalization, AI, and what counts, a lot of the uncertainty we have in finance comes exactly the same way in the way that you always have uncertainty about how to raise your kids. And there's only a few set formulas, and you'll always have people telling you that the problem's been solved, or this is the way that you need to do it. But at the core of it, you as a parent need to be flexible, and you need to think of what makes sense for yourselves and the way that your organization works. So, thinking of R2R, and this is based on my conversations with a lot of German customers in the past. When we talk about automation, I'm usually told that manual work is a thing of the past. I have full SAP automation end to end. All my processes are completely automated. And, I've got a touchless system. But then when you scratch past the surface, I heard there was a question earlier about how many of you still use Excel, and a majority of you put up your hand. It looks like it isn't actually something that is stopped or stuck in a museum, but that they are, for all of us, a lot of things that we still do. Now, you're going to have a lot of people and a lot of banners saying, your problems are the things of the past. You've got 67% reconciliation, 100% automation of this, 70% automation of that. And I'm not going to talk against any of my fellow exhibitors, but at your core what you're doing from 9 till 5 every single day and how automated your process truly is. Now, the problem is, when you think of it, there is always a difference between perception and reality. I've spoken to a CFO of a very, very huge organization, and they said, there's no Excel within my organization. Everything's automated because they've spent a crazy amount of money on SAP. But then when I spoke to someone several levels below, their perception or their reality was completely different. And as finance professionals, a lot of our work is battling between what is perceived of our peers, our managers, business, and what reality is, which is where the difficulty lies. And what is the reality? Again, coming back to the concept of kids, People tell you it's very easy to have a kid. It's very easy to keep them away from a laptop, an iPad, screen time. It's very easy to not feed them sweets. Do not take them to McDonald's. Make them have 2.5 vegetables every 4 hours. But we know what the reality is, just like this. And that was a quote taken from a CFO, which still rings heavily true today. So then the question then becomes, if we're still relying so heavily in Excel, how do we bring efficiency and automation? Because we know that that's what CFOs are being told. That's what I'm going to be pitching to your CFOs, by the way. But reality is somewhat different. Now, delving deeper into how to solve that problem, starting off with your immediate bosses, the message coming down the mountain. They want to make decisions faster. They want to be flexible. They want to be agile. And usually you're told, I need to know, can we cut headcount? Or can we open up a new division? Or how much cash do we have for that? And the reality is, for you to give a very honest answer within a split second is extremely difficult, even if you are automated. And from a CEO's perspective, they just want that answer really quickly. Now, what we've looked at as High Radius is we're relatively new to the market. We came in when everyone told us that everything is in the museum, so to speak. You can reconcile your accounts. You can substantiate easily. SAP and other ERPs provide automation to a high level. So our teams don't really need work, or we don't really need you, or me in that instance. But when we did focus on it more, the question always came up when we spoke to people, what exactly could we do to improve your life? You could have an end-to-end process, but is there anything missing? And usually a quiet word would then occur that with everything that I have, I'm still heavily reliant on IT. I still have a very rigid system, and if anything does not fit directly inside the box that my managers have built, I have to go back and rely on my tried and tested tool. For the parents in the room, that's the equivalent of, I've listened to all the websites, I've watched the YouTube videos, but when my child continues to cry, I go to the McDonald's drive-thru, or something of that equivalent. And so when we entered the market, we then said, what else can we do, and where are the problems that keep on arising? And we could put it into two key buckets. One is our jobs at a high level is picking up errors, anomalies in the matrix, so to speak. We validate, we confirm, we substantiate. So even if you've got robots running the end-to-end, we still need to double check. It's in our nature to be cautious in what we do. And because of that nature, even with the automation that is very good and out there, we still end up with a cramming process as part of our close. So it might say our real close is 3 days, 2 days, 4 days. But in reality, in the shadows, far away from your CFO, there's still a lot of validation checks. There's still a lot of sense checks for the information coming through. And so one of the things that we built in was a way to detect anomalies to help the user with their journey. Thinking of how it works, you've got 30 days in an average month. Things can go wrong because as accountants, we always have things that land up on our desk without much of our control. We've got a separate AR department, a separate AP department. People don't put in the invoice number correctly. We have to communicate and validate with other departments. And by the time you get to the answer, it becomes difficult. Or you've got a team who are posting journals to make those corrections to your process. Now for us, one of the things we do is provide you with, for lack of a better term, the most efficient member of your team. Someone looking for the glitches in the matrix. And what that would do is not replace or fundamentally change the way that you work, but using AI, replicate what you do at a much faster rate and provide you with the answers that you need so that you can make decisions faster. It could be an error, i.e. you've posted to the wrong account or you haven't posted on time because you've been busy listening to me and you have a major corrective journal at 10 in the morning. The second challenge then that we decided to take on was, how do we solve the problem of all the rampant Excel spreadsheets still within organizations? And I am happy to tell you that we are not built to replace Excel, because when something works, you do not replace it. If anything, you build on it. The way to then think of that, putting it in the context of parents, is you're not going to limit screen time, but maybe you control actually what they watch. And I know there's lots of parents who've tried to find educational cartoons or TV that suits their values. And we've done the same thing, but from a finance perspective. Now, I've been thinking or speaking very hypothetically, but I know that you've got 2 days here, so I didn't want to talk too much at you in detail. I wanted to set the scene for what you should be looking out for. The tablet, which allows your kid to watch 1 hour of TV instead of no TV, because that's not reality. And anyone who says it is doesn't actually have the internet or children, probably. So, to summarize, we've got 2 things that we've built. One is what we call LiveCube, which is actually another database. It's another software system. But importantly, it has the look, feel, functionality of Excel. So one of the things that, especially as leaders, you always think about is, even if I were to think of a system, change management is key. How do I get my team to accept something? How do I get my child to eat vegetables? And for us, we decided to put the vegetables under the meat, so to speak. So we built a database which looks like Excel, but is actually a software system. And then we looked at the processes that people have, and we didn't look to change it, but we looked to provide AI agents to help automate some of those steps. So what you're seeing on screen at the left is, even with software, even with automation, a lot of you would be familiar with these steps. I need to bring data from my source system. I need to validate it in an Excel. I need to communicate with team members. And then at the end of it, if I've made any changes, of which the back and forth goes on and is never really taken account of. But in addition to that, when I'm done, I need to make a posting or a corrective entry back to my source system. When we talk about AI, the journey of AI for us is truly understanding what your process is, truly understanding what your child is, so to speak. And then with that understanding, using specific technology, not directly out of the box or separate from the way that you operate, but blended with your system to help you improve the way you work. Now, coming back to the theme that I mentioned at the beginning about the things that you should be mindful of. When you're going about and you've collected your free socks, your USB, ask the question, does this fit into my process? Or would I need to change my process significantly? Because you'll hear a lot of time or a lot of presentations about agents or AI automating. But in reality, the most successful technology and what we believe will be the most successful technology going forward in the next 10, 15 years is not something that's going to completely disregard the past 40 years, but something that's going to fit into your system. Now, that's, from a technology standpoint, how we employ AI. We look at your steps, we break it down, we understand your process, and then what AI actually does is it does some of those steps for you so that what we thought we would do when we became accountants, review, make strategic decisions, is actually what we would be doing instead of some of the mundane steps before. And for all of you who already are fully automated, think about how many of those steps in orange do you still currently do? Because if you still have those steps, the question then becomes, do I actually have a typewriter in a museum, or is the typewriter still by my desk? Now, of course, a presentation wouldn't be a presentation without someone pitching their own products. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is then a key consideration for yourselves as you go through and make decisions about what makes sense for your child, which is, when I look at my process, how is success measured? From a high radius perspective, when we talk about measuring success, we break down finance into small buckets. Again, thinking of the steps before, if you have a 20-step process, we say, and we will sit with you and say, how many of those steps do you currently do? How many steps can we help you with? Can we drop your kid off at school? Can we auto-wipe their mouth when they get dirty? And when you break it down from just being record to report or close, and you get very, very granular about process, it becomes easier to measure what true success is or what true failure is. Away from finance, you'll always hear success gurus say, if you've got a goal, be very specific. Be very specific down to date, time of what you want to achieve. And we do the same thing. If you want to do an accrual, what are the steps? Know your department, audit your team. What actually helps them, what actually hinders them. And then speak to whichever provider that you have with that true understanding of your process and say, can you help? If they give you a high-level answer of, yes, we provide AI automation and we will help you reconcile and you will have full control, capacity, compliance, and visibility, pause and dig a little deeper. So in summary, for that very big part that I just mentioned, for someone or a vendor to help you, you need to help us, and you need to truly know your process. If you know your process and truly know your pains, then you can be specific about how to solve it. Hopefully, when we leave this place, if any of you come to the booth and want to know more about what we do, I expect to hear very distinctive problems, not just, I want to improve my clothes or I need to reconcile. Be definitive, be very accurate about where your problems lie. What I will do as a help to that process is when I do talk about the automation, the uploading of Excels, that's common. The creation journey is where the key would lie. And that's the other pitfall that you need to consider. When people talk about automation, if they talk about you fitting into their system instead of them somewhat fitting into yours, be wary. Because AI, in its true form, with success, isn't us talking at you. It is a marriage. Hence, the title that I had, Excel and AI. One is not going to replace the other. One will not stop the other from coming into being. And last but not least, hopefully at the end of the process, we'll be able to help you with your anomalies, not necessarily replace your Excel, but marry into your process with something that has some of the functionality that your team needs. And from a business perspective, because obviously when you do pitch, you're going to have to ask for a budget for it. Together, we can have definitive goals of what actual success means. Now, one thing that I'll always say definitively is we put our necks on the line in terms of if you're accurate about your problem, we'll be very accurate about our solution. So if you want to come test us, please do come and challenge us. And know that when we look at a process, we are not looking at it just as the close, but we also deal with consolidation, so the true end to end. And hopefully by the time you're finished in a conversation with us, I don't know if we'll put that typewriter back in the museum, but at least we'll have a true understanding of what our child truly is. And with that, I'll open the floor to questions.
Big applause for Temba. That was very visual. Thank you. If you got any questions, there are these QR codes in front of you. I will get them here. Otherwise, I have a lot of questions, of course.
Yeah.
First question, a little more in detail. How do we start to collaborate? If I go to your booth, if I ask you, how can you help me? How do you actually start?
So when we do understand your process, like I said, we've got a list of AI agents which do automate some of the processes. For example, an accrual is an accrual.
Yeah.
There's only certain steps that you would go through. But it's, I would say, 60% out of the box, but then understanding the other parts of the process that a team is trying to build. So we would say, bring us your process. We provide a proof of concept, i.e. take your process, prove it back to you in terms of what the true automation would be, and then you make a decision.
Okay. A little more basic question. You said you shouldn't change the processes. If you go to someone to help you with all of these things you were talking about, why not? If they can tell you it's going to increase your efficiency, why not change the processes?
Because that's a very basic answer when people say change their processes. When thinking of true changing of processes, you're thinking, how will my team actually adopt software?
Yeah.
Who will actually have control?
Yeah.
What will the work life of my team truly be? And so coming up with a broad-based, you just need to change processes, in reality, it's either very painful or it just doesn't happen. Anyone who's gone through an ERP migration or who has implemented automation will usually have some type of story to tell about what high-level changing of processes actually means.
Yeah. All right. And then I was just wondering, in the beginning you were talking about this like kind of, I'm not sure if you say that in English, cognitive dissonance of between the CFO who's saying there's no Excel in our organization and then the people actually working with it. How does that still happen? Why don't they know what their people are doing?
I think, like everything else in life, you forget.
Yeah.
Thinking back, we forget what it was like to meet a friend by a shopping mall after calling them on our landline and saying, I'll meet you at 30 minutes at this spot.
Yeah.
Now we can't do without phones. And I think the higher you go, you forget what the process on the ground is like. And most of the time, the conversations is with vendors who tell you some of these problems are things of the past. And a lot of the time, the higher you go, all you do is you receive the answer. You don't see all the backwards calculations which got you there.
Yeah.
What we try and do is we remind them, and we truly try to solve the problem bottom up.
Yeah. Okay. So stay closer to the actual work. Okay. Last question from my side. What's the most hands-on tip that you got for us in terms of dealing with Excel, dealing with all these processes, and maybe adding AI on top?
Yeah.
Or just coming to your booth?
So I would say at the beginning of, and it's something that I mentioned in the speech in a different way, at the beginning of your process, you truly need to understand and accept where you really are. Sometimes when I speak to organizations, the thinking is, we are efficient. But you truly need to understand, okay, you've got a certain amount of efficiency, but where are the potential problems still there? And start off with that. When you look at things in the cold light of day, is the English saying. I don't know what the German equivalent of that.
Not sure, but it works.
When you look at things in reality without any bias and you understand it, that's when you can truly start to change. i.e., again, since I've been talking about the theme of a kid, once you truly understand your kid, you know how best to be a parent.
Great closing words. Thank you. And a big applause for Temba, please. Thank you.
Thank you.